Attention New York City listeners, I'm excited to share 2 upcoming live This Is Taste tapings that I think you're going to like, taking place at Rizzoli Bookstore in Manhattan's Flatiron District. On April 8th, I will be joined by Barbara Costello, better known through her Brunch with Babs social accounts. We will be talking about her brand new cookbook, Cooking with Babs, and on May 5th, I will be joined by photographer and journalist Craig Maude for a reading and conversation about his debut memoir, Things Become Other Things. I love this book so much and welcome you all in to hear his story about walking around Japan and so much more. Tickets are available at the Rizzoli website, rizzolibookstore.com. I hope to see you there.
The face of food insecurity and who's coming to the fridges is not just one face. There's so many different people that are coming. There's different cultures, there's different age groups, there's different needs. So everything is really needed at the fridges.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Asmeret Berhe-Lumax is the founder of One Love Community Fridge, a network of 10 community fridges across New York and Seattle working to eradicate food insecurity. Their work is more urgent than ever, and it's so special to have Asmeret into the studio to talk about fighting hunger and the stigma associated with it, and One Love Community Fridge's big plans for expansion.
And we got some breaking news. Poppi was acquired by Pepsi, and we have Andrea Hernandez from Snackshot to go over the deal and what it means for the probiotic soda category. It's a fascinating conversation. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Asmeret Berhe-Lumax, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for driving into Midtown in the midst of your busy day to talk about One Love. I imagine every day is probably full of a million different things that you have to do.
I did find parking right in front, which is like
it's
gold.
an omen.
It's a gold.
The rest of your day is going to be perfect. So I've invited you on the show today to talk about One Love Community Fridge and the amazing work that you do. But first, I just want to give a little bit of context into who you are and what you bring to the project. So to start off, I'm wondering if you can tell me if there are any food memories that you have from growing up that you think are especially impactful or memorable.
I mean, I think for me, there's so much around our family life revolves around food and meals, or if there's an issue, you solve it over a meal. If it's a celebration or somebody's birthday is also over a meal. But also such a simple thing is when somebody comes over, you always offer them something to eat and drink. So I have so many memories. But I think I grew up in a home where I think I was very fortunate. My mother cooked quite a bit. So we just always gathered in the kitchen.
What kind of food was she putting on the table for dinner?
Let me see. So it's a mix. So I grew up in Sweden, in Stockholm, but my family is from East Africa, Eritrea. So it would be a mix. We would eat a lot of our traditional food, which is like injera, and with a lot of stews, fused with traditional Swedish food, which is I don't even know the English word for it. It's like a sausage, meatballs, fish.
The Eritrean Swedish fusion food is not something I've ever had before, but I would love to be a guest at that table. It sounds awesome.
Love to have you.
So what kind of work were you doing before you started One Love Community Fridge?
Oh, I spent a lot of years in fashion, and I did worked in product development, production, supply chain management. Very different from building a nonprofit. However, I think with One Love is this perfect fusion of my personal experiences and my professional experiences just all coming together.
Could you maybe explain what a community fridge is and how they operate?
Yes. So a community fridge is, first of all, the beauty of it is a community fridge is literally a fridge that's owned by the community. But it's a fridge that, many of us have in our home that you place outdoors in a public space for anyone to be able to access and for anyone also participate in helping to stock them and really creating a space for resource exchange and sharing. And it's really interesting because it is an appliance, but when you put it in a public space like that, it just actually comes alive, and the beauty of like the community that's created around it.
So take me back to the pandemic. How did the idea for One Love kind of first come about, and what did the early days look like?
I mean, we were here in New York during the pandemic and during lockdown. I was volunteering with two organizations that they're a great organization that work hard to address food insecurity. And I was here with my family, and a friend of ours set up one of the first fridges in New York, which was in Harlem. And I just thought it was this amazing, just this genius idea because it was so simple, but it also would help address some of the challenges a lot of traditional food banks organization was experiencing at that time, which was a overwhelming demand, more families ever needing support in terms of having access to the most basic thing, which is food and water. And I think the other thing was, I always say that because we're so used to reading and knowing like big numbers. And it's very different to read, 2 million New Yorkers are food insecure compared to actually knowing, 10 families that are food insecure. We just wanted to take action, and I wanted to really make sure I was able to do it in a way that included my family and friends and build that space.
Yeah, definitely. I remember first hearing about One Love in those days of the pandemic, and I think being in New York in that period of time, so many people were seeing like the gaps of people that weren't being reached, and also the ways that being able to gather in the way that like a food pantry or a food bank would normally have, like we weren't necessarily able to do that. I'm curious if you could tell me about like what are some of the challenges and the benefits of running community fridges versus a more traditional food pantry.
It's not a traditional model. And I think initially what it required was also just helping people open up their minds, and, a little bit of a cultural mind shift in terms of, what is possible in this space. And that was the biggest like initial challenge, and like finding host partners, and also I think for our food partners to ensure that they're not worried about liability, because we live in a country that where it's very easy to get sued, and there's but I think beyond that, the biggest challenge after that was just that it takes, being given the grace of time, because I think our approach to it is about community building and really like connecting people, engaging people, and also empowering people, and really trying to address the root of the problem rather than just being a Band-Aid solution. So goes on beyond, redirecting food, or, it's really, really making sure that people feel empowered to be part of the solution. So, and creating that and building that takes time. So I think that's like the biggest, another big, like one of the biggest challenges as well. But I'm so confident about that. That's where we have the biggest impact. That's also the space where we're able to, I think, inspire more people to come up with their own ideas or other ideas and carry it even further.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining them, just like in your own home, how you have to clean out the fridge and stock the fridge and make sure the milk isn't expired. So what does that kind of work look like on the back end?
Yeah, so for example, with One Love, we have food partners that we pick up food donations, excess food from 7 days a week, and we have an incredible volunteer community that picks up food donations and helps stock community fridges. And then the other part that's so important is because it's food. It's helping actually care for the fridge and the area around it. So we usually partner with a fridge host, and it could be anything from a cafe to another nonprofit to healthcare provider that would allow us to set up the fridge in connection with their space and provide electricity. And then we have community members that will help check on and on the fridge and clean the fridge. But the real goal is also really for the fridge to be adopted and to have the local community to take full ownership of it. So with One Love is like, we'll help stock it, we'll help drive volunteers, and we'll help clean it, but the ownership doesn't stay with One Love. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you want the community to feel like it's their fridge. And
it is their fridge.
It is their fridge. And that they can come by and see what's in it. And if they notice that something has spilled, pick it up. If their neighbor needs something, to come to it in that kind of way, that kind of connection.
Yes. And I mean, I think for me, unfortunately, the demand for food far exceeds what we're able to supply at this point. However, I think one of the moments that makes me the most happiest is when I go by a fridge or when I drive by or stop by a fridge and I see that somebody else has put something in the fridge, even if it's an apple or a sandwich. And so knowing that there's this constant exchange going on locally.
Yeah, I'm in the group chat, so I got the text that's like, this bakery has a bunch of leftover bread. Can somebody go get it? Or this cafe has leftover sandwiches, and that kind of distribution that happens. And I think it's really interesting in a city like New York because we do have so much variation in like access and economic benefit. And there are people who have so much extra food to spare from events or things like that. And then also this great need at the same time in the city. And to see that kind of way that like having excess at one business or one place can help feed another part of that community, I think is interesting. And I'm curious how you've seen One Love grow since you first started it. How many fridges do you have right now, and how has the business grown in other kinds of ways as well?
Yes, I mean, think also for any listener that doesn't that might not be aware of like the statistics too. Like in U.S., over 44 million people are food insecure. New York City, over 2 million people are food insecure. 1 out of 7 adults, but also 1 out of 4 children. And then yesterday, I don't know if you saw, there was an article that came out that was sharing updated statistics in terms of how poverty is rising, and 1 out of 4 New Yorkers cannot meet needs for, essential needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for like us as an organization is we're just trying to do as much as possible we can through collaboration and raising awareness, and also creating a space that people can participate in ways that work for them. And I think that's really important in order for it to, really, really have impact. We currently have 10 fridges in New York, actually 9 fridges in New York, and 1 is in Seattle. Then we also help support another close to 30 fridges that are set up by other organizations, so mutual aid groups or individuals. And we support them by driving like food donations and volunteers. But then we have more fridges underway, which I think is like amazing, because the fridges that we're setting up now has been because people, organizations are reaching out to us and saying, hey, we've seen how this is working. We would love to have a fridge. How can we set that one up? And I think that's a big shift from, a couple of years ago, because honestly, we could probably have a fridge on every other block and that would still not be enough. And then in terms of an organization, I think we have just like steadily grown our volunteer community. And it's amazing to see that, just in the WhatsApp, we have over 500 people that everyone participate in different ways. There are like, I call them fire souls. They're that are involved every day, and then some people are, every other week or once a month, or for different for different activations or packing days and food drives. And I think that's the beauty of it too, that to be able to create a space again that people can participate in ways that work for them, and hopefully meet somebody else or get to learn something else, and again come up with another idea.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And I really appreciate you kind of sharing some of those statistics about the reality of hunger in this country and in this city right now. I think a lot of people reading the news and certainly experiencing it themselves when they go to the grocery store. Eggs are really expensive. Groceries, everything is really expensive just to be living.
And we also have to remember, this is all happening while over 40%, close to 50% of all the food that's being produced is being wasted.
Right. I'm just sitting with that number for a second, because it is so frustrating to see that food being wasted and to know that it could be so easy to direct it into other ways. Where are you getting most of the food that's going into the fridges? Is it grocery partners and people like that?
Oh, it's a mix. And that mix is important. So it's individuals. We always encourage individuals. If you have, excess food at home, but also even when you're, going to the store, if you can afford to buy a few extra things of, your favorite food to share with somebody else, to do that. And then also small businesses, we always try to figure out how can we make it easy for small businesses to participate. Especially we are also aware of that, a lot of, especially like restaurants, they have limited capabilities or resources. Like then the third one is really like bigger food partners that are able to help us, bring volume to the fridges.
I'm Nomi Fry.
I'm Vincent Cunningham.
I'm Alex Schwartz, and we are Critics at Large, a podcast from The New Yorker. Guys, what do we do on the show every week?
We look into the startling maw of our culture and try to figure something out.
That's right. We take something that's going on in the culture now. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book, maybe it's just kind of a trend.
And we expand it across culture as kind of a pattern or a template.
Join us on Critics at Large from The New Yorker. New episodes drop every Thursday. Follow wherever you get your podcasts.
As the summer travel season approaches, I'm excited to let you know about 2 upcoming Taste Travels, our immersive travel series hosted by cookbook authors and me, Matt Rodbard. On June 15th, I will be joining the Mediterranean dish author Susie Karache in Barcelona for an incredible week of culinary tours, cooking classes, and plenty of wine and jamon. And on September 15th, I will be joining author and baker Mauricio Leo of The Perfect Loaf for a tour of northern Italy. We will visit artisanal Parmigiano Reggiano and balsamic vinegar producers, take a masterclass in the art of panettone, and of course, eat plenty of stuffed pasta and mortadella in and around Emilia-Romagna. Both trips are nearly sold out and closing soon. If interested, write into hello@tastecooking.com and we will get you the information. That's hello@tastecooking.com. I hope to see you on one of our taste travels this summer.
Over the past couple of years, have you seen an increase or like a shift in demand as you've been able to expand?
Yes.
Are there any things that are like specifically in demand, or that when you put them in the fridge, they're going to be the first to get taken up?
I mean, right now it's eggs.
Yeah.
I was like, right now it's eggs, and we're really fortunate to have an amazing food partner, Hanson Brook Farms, that donate eggs. So that's been amazing, but everything is needed. Everything is needed. The face of food insecurity and who's coming to the fridges is not just one face. There are so many different people that are coming. There's different cultures, there's different age groups, there's different needs. So everything is really needed at the fridges. I think the one thing we try to focus on as much as possible is fresh food, especially fruit and vegetables, but also, different protein options. That's why eggs are so great. Down to things like that people might not think about, which is like salt, spices, herbs, and also really like what can we focus on that we feel is missing that maybe other organizations are already providing.
What about like supplements or like that kind of thing? Does that make sense in the fridge as well?
Yeah, we don't really bring it to the fridges. However, what we do is we organize like consistent like packing days where we focus on, combining fresh produce with either like it's a specific theme. It might be, around hygiene. So it might be hygiene products, or it could be supplements. Like, we really focus on immune system, for example. Or if it's during the winter, it might be, cold weather.
Vitamin D,
Yeah.
etc.
Yes, exactly. But we try to avoid having any non-food products at the fridges.
Yeah, I imagine that must be part of the work as well when you're cleaning it, is making sure that people aren't, dropping random things at the fridge as well that they think like someone might want to take.
Yes. I mean, it's all like people do with the intention is there.
Yeah, good intentions.
Good intentions, right? But because people come in there to get their food, it is important that it's sanitary, and we discourage people to leave anything that's not food at the fridges.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's New York. People like put their things that they don't want on the curb, and someone always comes and takes it.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about like how education and the other activations that you do fit into the One Love Community Fridge mission. Are there any like events like the Farm to Fridge or Chef to Fridge, or even like the big packing days that you think have been especially impactful for One Love over the past year?
Yeah. I mean, our mission is to connect, empower, engage the community, and we do it through education and then access to food. And I think the 3 lead words is like respect, dignity, and health. So, we talked about kind of our food to fridge program, which is really, again, redirecting food and minimizing food waste. But what we realize, again, because if you want the impact to be deep, is like access in itself, it's not enough. That's why we also included education in it in the mission. And so we built like 3 other programs around it, which is Farm to Fridge, School to Fridge, and Chef to Fridge. And they all interact and overlap. And what we realized was like, again, like the community building aspect is so important, especially when you want to include education as well. So we do a lot of workshops and food drives and packing days or speaking engagements, but they're all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we look at it is as like, if true impact, deep impact, and the reality of how the world works and how we work as humans, we need to have these 4 programs always interconnected.
So, Asmeret, I'm curious if you think that the way that you view food or cook has changed at all in your own life since you've been working with One Love Community Fridge and engaging with food in this kind of way.
Yes. It's really interesting because when I first moved to New York, I was actually really excited because I was like, oh, amazing. I live in the city. I wouldn't actually never have to cook.
Yeah.
And I was really excited about it. But then, you realize after a while that I think the way I was eating probably wasn't the healthiest for me. Your body can handle different things at different ages. And then I had kids. And I think once I had kids, that's when I really, really started cooking. But then I think we live in a city and the lifestyle that a lot of people have, it's like either you might not have time to cook, or you don't know really how to cook, or you don't have access to a kitchen. And then I think on the other hand, and at the same time, is like, eating healthy could be difficult, again, because it could be either very expensive or time consuming, or again, you might not have this social structure around you might not know how to cook on a certain budget that would work for you. So I think it's been really interesting. So I feel like the way my work with One Love has affected me has, one, actually made me really look at waste in our family. And it's interesting because I grew up in a family, it's an immigrant family, where my parents, especially my mom, would use everything. Like nothing would ever go to waste. And everything could also always be reused. Like if, it could be reused another way. So like 0 waste. And I think when I first moved to New York, I was kind of like, oh, actually I don't have to think about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've kind of come back to that. And then I think with One Love too has been like, there's so many volunteers and community members that I'm so inspired by, that have also like taught me how to like think about food in different ways, or things like, different ways of cooking. So that's been amazing. The irony of it is where we currently are, because it is a kind of 24/7 operation, is I'm probably cooking less now than I did 2 years ago or
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about shifting needs based on where you are in your life or who you're cooking for, what time you have, even like cleaning up after cooking takes so much time compared to being able to get takeout or have a meal from somewhere else. And I think all of those factors, in addition to just having access to food, all kind of add up to impact the way that we like have our own relationships with food.
But I think like the other thing with One Love is like, and I think it's important to mention, is like, we do focus on fresh food. We focus on, workshops or like advocating like how to cook or, But I think it's important to know like we're not pushing a specific lifestyle on anybody. It's really about giving people the opportunity to choose for themselves and having that access, and at least like being aware. And I think that's the thing that's important. So I really believe in like having like a balanced life, if you have if they have the opportunity to do that. But so I don't believe in, just eating one thing and not the other, or, any of the extremes. And I think that's also not sustainable for most people. But for us, it's really about like, how do we, again, like just giving people the opportunity to choose. Because a lot of people don't have the privilege of making those choices or having access to fresh produce.
Definitely. And looking ahead at this year, do you have any plans for the future of One Love that you can share with us?
This year I'm so excited. Last year, we piloted our first like a CSA program, which is a community-supported agriculture program, where we were able to not just take on donations from some of the farms that we work with, but actually be able to purchase produce from them. And that was amazing because it was connected to all of our 4 ecosystems, where we worked with weekly chefs to create a recipe, and was based on what was in the bag. And we were able to donate 4 bags for every 1 bag that somebody subscribed to. So I'm really excited to do that this year again and extend the program. We did 10 weeks last year. We're doing our health forum again. We have quite a lot of programming and workshops that are coming up this year, and hopefully just keep growing our food partners. And then we have additional fridges coming up. So there's a lot happening this year.
There's always a lot happening. And in the show notes on the episode, we'll link to One Love's website. So if people want to plug in and find out about when they can do the CSA or when the health forum will be coming up, they can plug in that kind of way. And I guess to close today, you have a platform right now. We're on the mic and people are going to be listening to this. And if you were going to tell people who are listening like one thing about food insecurity or changing access to that, like what would be your message that you would want people to hear?
We can all do something, and that no action is too small and no action is too big. But to get involved and just take that first step, and, just to remind people that, if we all just do something, we do a lot together. And that I said it earlier, but the face of food insecurity, it might not be the face you might think it is. And I think just get involved. Please, just reach out and we can help you take that first step.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Andrea Hernandez, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's been a busy week, and I just have to say, been reading the Snack Shot, and honestly, you're covering these breaking news stories with absolute rigor. And this week saw an incredible story in CPG, the industry you cover, the acquisition of Poppi by PepsiCo, This is huge news. We talked about it in our terrific year-end recap. It was one of our big storylines for 25. And here we are in March. The big acquisition happened. Did you expect this? Did you have sources tell you that this was going to happen?
Yeah, it was so funny because I got the sort of like scoop of it on Thursday and like I was trying to verify, but I realized like my source was actually really good because like when Bloomberg popped it on Friday, they were like, oh, it's going to be like 1.5. And my source had actually been more accurate with like the closer to 2 billion dollar number that came out on Monday. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of expected.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, first off, what did Pepsi actually buy? I've been reading about this, and I think for our listeners who are really interested in this world, when you acquire a company like Poppy, what do you buy actually?
Well, I think obviously they're buying a brand because it is kind of like a premium that they're like buying this company for. And it's really interesting because if you look at the numbers, it's like 1.95 billion, which I'm pretty sure that was forced to make sure that it beat out the latest valuation of Olipop, which was like 1.85. But then they also like made sure like to like note that like 300 million of that is like tax, like it's going to be a tax benefit, so it comes down to ultimately a price of like a net purchase price of 1.65. And it's funny because like that it's, unless you're like really into this business, you don't know the little digs that you can find even in situations like this. But like allegedly, like I heard that they actually wanted like a higher purchase price and that Pepsi was like, no. um, but these are things that it's very interesting to kind of like unpack because in my opinion, I feel this sale that was denied by for a while, right? Because obviously legally they can't really confirm until the sale has gone through. It's funny because like I do feel like Poppy really burned through a lot of money to get to this stage. And I had been hearing and like obviously like I like to say now like streets are saying or like allegedly. um for a while it's I guess kind of like known that again allegedly that Poppy had been spending a lot of money and marketing and doing stunts and really like to me kind of gave me the ick because I was like, oh, why are we forcing? It felt very forced, right? It's like, okay, if you're really doing well and you're really the future of soda, how much do you have to like really keep like putting that in people's minds as opposed to feeling like Olipop is kind of more chill. Their numbers apparently are better. They are actually profitable. And they're kind of quiet, even at conferences like Expo West, like Poppy was known for having these extravagant booths that some allege that were like upwards of $500,000 in, price just to have that for, like a 3-day conference.
I mean, it's like the story is old as Andreessen Horowitz. I mean, when you have acquisition insights and when you're talking about the M&A world, you want to have a really shiny new toy out there. And I observe as well that Poppy famously sent 100 vending machines to influencers around the Super Bowl at great cost and great waste to many critics. Of course, their Super Bowl ad really indexed high, and you wrote about it as well as many in the industry. And they're spending huge amounts of money and burn on getting into stores. I mean, our bodega downstairs here in Midtown is a great test case for the way slottings have worked. And of course, Poppy has an end cap cooler branded in this very competitive store at great expense. But Andrea, like ultimately for the founders, it worked out, right? Getting this cash deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what either there's only two routes you can go. You can either go public or you can go the acquisition, right? Though there's no other route for CPG brands. And, it's very rare that like a brand will IPO because you do go under a lot of scrutiny, right? You put that S1 out there and it's going to be a field day for everybody, if it's like something ridiculous, like famously Chobani that prepared for the IPO and like withdrew after like there was some tatters about how Oatly's had been overly inflated. And it can be like hit or miss, right? Like it could be something amazing like Monster that has for the past 30 years outperformed like tech stocks like Google and other similar like huge tech companies. And we're talking about like an energy drink. So I do think that it really is like dependent on like the state of your company is. So like I love to think about like what's going on with Liquid Death, like they were saying like, oh, we're prepping for an IPO, whatever. I also think like they probably haven't done so because I feel like they've probably also been burning through a lot of money and like that just wouldn't look really good. Putting it out and an S1. That's just like my gut feeling about that. But I feel like, it's great for the founders, obviously for the investors, Kavu being like the biggest one um here. But if you look at like the multiplier, it's like 3 times their sales, which for me like that purchase price is pretty low for what like Poppy was really giving like this illusion of being this like, oh, soda is back and modern soda kind of vibe. And it'll be interesting to see if Olipop eventually does try to go that IPL route. And they just raised $50 million, and it was like a round led by JP Morgan, which kind of gives me like a feeling that it could be JP Morgan dealing with their IPO.
Yeah, leading the S1 and getting them into the public markets and getting that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Ollie has been kind of stealth in some ways with quietly growing their brand. I mean, I thought the Mountain Dew launch was at a very small anecdotal level successful in that it seemed like that was like a big, I think it was last spring when they put billboards out and people are talking about it a little bit about that flavor and it continues to innovate on the flavor side. While Poppy, to me, and this is just me speaking as just a guy, it's like not really doing that innovation.
I think both companies, it's so funny because everybody's like, oh, soda is dead, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, literally could not be farther from the truth. And I think it's funny because the success of brands like Olipop and Poppy comes from Americans' indoctrination into like soda culture. So like the fact that you could be like, oh, cherry cola, and people have a sense of like understanding around what that is, like, and that those nostalgic flavors have made Poppy and Olipop successful in the sense of like you're giving me like a better for you taste of what I grew up with, if that makes sense. Like, it's funny because I always say it's the Poppies pull the Pepsi literally all the way to like getting acquired by Pepsi in the sense that they started off as Mother, which was a ACV, really artisanal farmers market kind of vibe bottle looking bottle that they launched with. And Olipop did start off as a fiber, a prebiotic soda in a can. And then obviously Poppy, like the rebrand came around 2020 after, Olipop had been out there for a few years now. And I think it's really funny because like people try to say like, oh, this rebrand is what gave Poppy like almost $2 billion like acquisition, whatever. I'm like, no, they were just like, you just pull the Pepsi, which is like, oh, you see something that like the first to market is doing and you capitalize on that. And you're like really riding the coattails of like what the work that other people did to like sort of make this category even a thing. But what's even more interesting is that people really don't know that Coca-Cola actually did fiber drinks first in Japan. And you can still find that drink in Japan. And it's funny, like when you talk about like, okay, first to market versus execution, that also like Coca-Cola kind of missed like they were early to something that they just didn't know what to do with, or how to like make it a America is kind of like the biggest testing ground of whether something has legs to stand or not, because of the obviously like the gargantuan uh, consumer market that it is. But yeah, it's really fascinating to to see this all unfold.
When somebody writes the Probiotic Soda Wars book, which will happen, I have no doubt, that Japan reporting is going to be really rich and interesting. Question about Pepsi's acquisition of Poppi. You think about Pepsi, and one of their largest channels is fast food and quick service, QSR. I mean, I don't know about their formulation on the fountain. I think I talked to the founder of Olipop about fountain, and I think this was 2 years ago, said that it was something that they were working on. I still haven't seen it. You're closer to the sources. Do you think we'll see Poppi at Taco Bell in the next year or so?
Ollie blend is what they call it, I think, and it's supposed to be his proprietary blend. So like I've written about this before, like 2 years ago when I did this whole state of beverage and wrote about like the soda wars 2.0. Like I made note, like, it was always going to be really hard for Olipop to be bought, because integrating that into like the massive logistics that companies like Pepsi and Coca-Cola have, like it it would take, I guess, like a bigger investment. And so when you look at what Poppy has, like their ingredients, like it's not that like far, like it's not that crazy. And so I think, will we see it in fountains? Yeah, because like I really do think that Poppy's future is getting away from anything that has to do with gut health or prebiotics. They just agreed to settle on this class action lawsuit. I think it's going to be like for 8.9 million, and I think it's something that they've already been doing in Canada, because Canada has like stricter regulations around health claims and ingredients. So do I think we're gonna, definitely, I mean, that's what Pepsi's going to do, that's why they bought this brand. Whether or not I think that they're gonna keep it the way that it is, like I don't I don't think that it's gonna, especially knowing that they settled with this like lawsuit. I don't know how much of that, like, oh, it's got prebiotics or fiber, like, and honestly, I don't think the mainstream consumer gives a shit about, literally, like, no pun intended, like that they like care about like the prebiotics aspect of something like a Poppy or an Olipop. And I always love to joke about that, and I've obviously made like a myriad of memes. But I also like feel that this whole movement is going to condense down into just modern soda. And it's going to be, Walmart just has an aisle now, like started to debut an aisle that's called modern soda, and you have things like a Zevia, you have Olipop, you have Poppy, you also have something like a Spindrift that also just came out with like their version of a modern soda, but no health claims at all. And then you also have like Liquid Death try to get into that like kind of modern soda category by launching things like Killer Cola. And so I think Poppy and Olipop both started to try to get into, more of this. Obviously, Olipop is at Sweetgreens, Poppy is in Chipotle. They've already done like the tall boys that are mostly made to kind of appeal to C stores, convenience stores. So yeah, I think it's just the natural like post acquisition um like trajectory of being bought by someone like a Pepsi. But also Pepsi is like, it's funny because like you have all these big food companies starting to really hedge against the maha mania, against consumers being a lot more informed about what they put in their bodies, and starting to build a sort of like health halo around their company, right? They just bought Siete for a similar premium, and now they have Poppy. So
Wonderful. And I think ultimately I agree with you when it comes down to formulation on the fountain and you're getting into Taco Bell's, the tens of thousands of locations, maybe 10,000. It's going to be about, is this a good soda? Is this a good alternative to what else is on the fountain? And the affinity will grow if they nail that formulation. And it's like a cool new product that people like the flavor profile, and the health claims are in the background, if anywhere, or non-existent, as you mentioned. Last thought, you mentioned Liquid Death and you mentioned other brands. I guess we've talked about Olipop and Poppy. Is there a third brand that you think will be acquired, or a next brand that be acquired in the next 6 months?
So I do think that the M&A appetite has and will continue to grow, especially as these big food companies have been quietly dissolving their venture arms, both big beverage and like big food. So everything from a General Mills to Distill Ventures, like Diageo's Distill Ventures. Like you're starting to see that these big companies are not really wanting to invest in innovation within their own house. And so I do think that that we're gonna continue to see more brands acquired. I'm not sure, like the ones that are left in beverage, for example, like Liquid Death, especially based on like their last raise, unless it's like, like for example, Spindrift. Like Spindrift got like acquired by like I think it's like a private equity firm. And for a brand that was like 15 years old, like when I saw like what it sold for, I don't really think that was like, whoa, like a really big exit. And I'm unsure what other brand has been able to pull like all the hype that something like an Olipop or Poppy have been able to do. And all these other acquisitions like Alani Nu that you saw recently, with Celsius acquiring it, Ghost that KDP acquired, but not in totality. So it's like really dependent on future performance, which is something that you see a lot in this space. But it's like you don't really need to necessarily fully acquire, so they'll get like maybe a 50% stake, and based on that performance, you'll eventually like acquire the rest of it. And so I'm not sure if something like a Liquid Death would want to get itself acquired versus trying to go for IPO. But based on like the latest, like they instead of raising more venture money, they went and got like a credit line for like 50 plus million from this like lender. So I'm like, I don't know. It could be something where you start to get desperate for that like cash exit. It could be something that's forced by even like a board. So I don't know, maybe yes. I feel like Liquid Death, I think not because I feel that they're like, oh my God, they have this huge hype or whatever, but I feel like it's been long enough that, I can sense that there's gotta be this sort of climax. Because there hasn't been another, raise in the same way that Olipop has. So, maybe something like a Liquid Death, I don't think it would be like a really insane, crazy number. I don't think it would be like more so than what an Olipop or a Poppy would probably Poppy went for. But I'm less interested in, not saying that I'm not interested in beverage. I just feel like there's not a lot of like other big brands that I'm like super fascinated by. I'm more so also thinking about like who like there's definitely be like companies like I feel like a Grasa or maybe like a Fly by Jing that are starting to become like really incumbent, and I'm very fascinated to see if this like M&A action moves into more of like pantry staples.
Well, Andrea, like, thank you so much for the time. Again, it's Snack Shot. I'm linking to in the show notes. You got to subscribe. Always appreciate your deep insights and your colorful writing. It's quite the 1-2 punch you got there. Love it.
Thank you.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango. Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell, logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.